Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive in deep again. Today we're exploring something I know we've all thought about at some point, personality. But PT, get this, we're going way beyond those BuzzFeed quizzes you take at 3 a.m.
Right. None of that what kind of cheesery stuff here. We're going deep into some fascinating Islamic scholarship on the topic.
Oh, this is going to be good. I already feel like I need to put my thinking cap on, but like the fancy academic version?
Well, get ready, because these sources aren't afraid to challenge some major assumptions we often find in Western psychology. Like, right off the bat, they question this whole idea of trying to neatly define and measure personality.
Yeah, because like how much can a personality test really tell you about this complex, messy thing we call a self?
Exactly. And these Islamic scholars point out that Western psychology can get a little too focused on what's measurable, on the purely material aspects of who we are.
Okay, so if we're not just a collection of data points, then what else is there? Spill the tea.
Well, get ready for this. The heart takes center stage here.
Wait, really? Not the brain.
Not just the brain, no. We're talking about the whole. This is way more than just emotions. Think intellect, will, even spiritual insight, all intertwined.
Whoa, okay, that's intense. I'm already starting to rethink my understanding of, well, pretty much everything. So, like, walk me through this. How does the Qulb shape our personality, according to these Islamic scholars?
So one source argues that the Qulb acts kind of like this central hub. It's where we process information from the world around us, but it also taps into something deeper, a kind of innate wisdom.
So it's not just about reacting to external stimuli. It's about interpreting them through this deeper lens.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting, because one source even brings up these cases of heart transplant recipients who seem to take on traits of their donors.
Whoa, hold up. Seriously. That's wild.
It is controversial, for sure, but it speaks to this idea that the heart, the kolb, holds a deeper connection to who we are than we might realize. And that brings us to a key concept in Islamic thought: Fitrah.
Fitrah, right? I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Like our inherent nature, the way we're wired from the get-go.
You got it. But the question these sources grapple with is, what is that nature really? Is it inherently good, leading us towards virtue, or is there a darker side, a pull towards, let's say, less than ideal choices?
Oh man, that's a big question. Like, are we born good or are we prone to messing things up? I feel like we've all asked ourselves that at some point.
Absolutely. And this is where a scholar like Ibn Khaldun comes in. He was wrestling with this very tension within Fitrah, this idea that humans are capable of incredible good A and D, well, some not so great stuff, often all at the same time.
That's like the most human thing ever, though, right? To be full of contradictions, constantly figuring out this whole good versus bad
It
thing.
gets that duality, right? That's what makes us so dynamic. It's like this inner tension, this push and pull between our potential for good and, yeah, our capacity for not so great choices. And Ibn Khaldun argues that this tension is actually what drives us to grow.
So it's not about being born good or born bad. It's this constant process of striving, of making choices that nudge us closer to our best selves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another key difference between the Islamic perspective and some Western schools of thought on personality. Self-development is seen as a lifelong journey, not something that's fixed in childhood or adolescence.
Okay, so no pressure then.
Well, there's always room for growth, right? But
Yeah.
it's not about achieving some kind of static perfection. It's about constantly evolving, becoming more aligned with our highest potential throughout our entire lives.
That's kind of liberating, actually, knowing that we're not stuck with whatever baggage we picked up in our early years. But okay, what keeps us going on this journey? What motivates us to do the inner work?
So it's more nuanced than just saying we're motivated by seeking pleasure or avoiding pain. These Islamic scholars delve into these profound interconnected forces of tarhib and tarhib.
Tarhib. Tarhib. Okay, those words sound pretty intense. Break it down for me. What do they even mean?
So tarhib, you can think of it as this deep yearning, this burning desire for closeness to the divine. It's that pull we feel towards something greater than ourselves, a longing for meaning and purpose.
Okay, so it's not just about achieving success in the world or chasing fleeting pleasures. It's a deeper kind of motivation, almost like a spiritual thirst.
Exactly. And then you have tarhib, which is often translated as awe. But it's even more than that. It's a deep reverence, a sense of profound humility in the face of something far greater than our limited human understanding.
So it's like we're being pulled forward by the yearning of Tarhib, this desire for something more, and at the same time we're being humbled by Tarhib, this awareness of just how vast and mysterious existence really is.
It's a dance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And these Islamic scholars suggest that it's in the heart, the qalb, where these motivational forces come together. It's where our yearning for the divine meets our understanding of our place within the grand scheme of things.
So the qualb is where we integrate all of these different pulls and pushes, where we discern the best path forward.
Precisely. But here's the thing. These sources also talk about how the qalb can become veiled, clouded by negativity, by distractions, by, let's face it, the relentless pursuit of worldly desires.
Oh, I feel that. It's like spiritual clutter, those mental cobwebs we all collect that keep us from seeing clearly. It makes me wonder at the pace of modern life, with all the information overload and constant stimulation, could actually be contributing to a kind of heart blindness.
Now, that's an interesting thought. And these scholars, even centuries ago, they were aware of this tendency. They stressed the importance of cultivating inner awareness, of clearing away those metaphorical veils so that the heart can function as it's meant to.
So it's not just about being intellectually aware of these concepts, Targib, the Qualb. We have to actually do the work to create space for them to guide our actions, our choices, our way of being in the world.
Exactly. It's about embodying these principles, allowing them to shape how we move through life. And one recurring theme in these writings is the idea of remembrance.
Remembrance, okay. Not just in the sense of memorizing facts, right?
Yeah.
But a more active, conscious awareness of, well, what exactly?
Awareness of the divine presence, even amidst the busyness of daily life. It's about staying connected to that deeper reality, that sense of something larger than ourselves.
That makes sense. But it also makes me wonder about how these sources differentiate between things like the soul, the spirit, and the heart. They all seem so interconnected.
They are. But there are distinctions. For example, one source describes the soul, or nafs, as the seat of our primal desires, our emotions. It's that part of us that's driven by those basic instincts: survival, pleasure, comfort.
So the nafs is like our internal drive, the engine, but one that can be a bit unruly if it's not guided properly.
A very apt analogy. Then you have the spirit, the ruh, which is described as this divine spark within us, our connection to the transcendent. It's the part of us that recognizes truth, beauty, goodness.
So the ruh is like our internal compass, always pointing us towards what's true, even when our nafs wants to pull us in another direction.
Yes. And this is where the qalb, the heart, comes in. It's described as the meeting point between the soul, the nafs, and the spirit, the ruh.
So the qualb isn't just about emotions. It's this integrating force, taking the raw energy of the nafs and hopefully guiding it toward the light of the ruh.
Beautifully put. And that's why purifying the qalb, clearing away those veils we talked about, is so vital in this Islamic perspective. If our heart is clouded, it can't effectively mediate between these different forces within us.
And if our heart isn't in the right place, if it's not aligned with our deepest values and aspirations, then our actions in the world, our interactions with others, they're going to reflect that inner dissonance.
Exactly. It's like trying to drive a car with a faulty engine. You might get somewhere eventually, but it's not going to be a smooth or enjoyable ride.
So this Islamic perspective on personality emphasizes a constant balancing act, this lifelong striving for inner harmony.
It is. And this balancing act isn't just about personal fulfillment. These scholars are also very clear about the importance of our actions in the world, how our individual journeys are connected to the well-being of others.
So it's not enough to just focus on our own spiritual growth, our own inner world.
Not at all. In fact, many of these sources emphasize that true self-development is inherently linked to our contributions to a just and compassionate society.
That's a fascinating link. This idea that personal growth and social responsibility are intertwined, that the inner and the outer are constantly reflecting and shaping one another. But how do we even begin to unpack that connection? It's like, wow, if by working on ourselves, on purifying our own qualb, we can actually contribute to a better world. That's huge. But how does that actually work? Do these Islamic scholars give any examples?
Well, one thing they emphasize is this idea of balance. They weren't about denying our desires or trying to, become these emotionless robots, They recognize that we have these noble aspirations, but also, let's face it, some not so noble impulses. It's part of being human, right?
Totally. It's like we're not supposed to deny those messier parts of ourselves, but learn to work with them.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging those internal tensions, that push and pull, and learning to navigate them instead of pretending they don't exist, which, let's be real, is way more realistic than trying to achieve some kind of perfect, airbrushed version of ourselves.
Totally. We've all got our stuff. And trying to deny it just makes it worse, right? It's like that saying, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, but fall to the level of our training.
Love that. And this is where that idea of Fitrah comes back in. We're all born with these unique predispositions, right? Strengths, weaknesses, the whole package. It's not about becoming someone we're not, but about working with what we've got.
Okay, I'm getting a gardening metaphor vibe here.
Go on.
It's like we're each given this plot of land,
Yeah.
our Fitrah, and it might have some really fertile areas, but also some rocky patches. But it's up to us to learn how to tend that land, how to make the most of what we've been given.
I love that. And that's where these sources emphasize education. But they're not just talking about, filling our heads with facts. They're talking about moral education, spiritual guidance, the kind of learning that shapes our character.
Right, so it's about nurturing wisdom along with knowledge, cultivating things like compassion and empathy alongside critical thinking skills.
Exactly. Because, let's face it, intelligence without empathy, well, that can be a recipe for disaster.
Truth. But how does the community aspect fit into all of this? We've talked a lot about individual growth, but these sources also talk about social responsibility, right?
They do. And they suggest that a supportive community, a society that prioritizes ethical values, actually plays a huge role in our individual journeys of self-development. It's about creating structures that make it easier for people to choose the path of growth.
It's like we can actually support each other's journeys of becoming more fully human.
Absolutely. One scholar even compared it to a garden. Like a single flower can be beautiful on its own, but a whole garden with all its diversity, that's where you see true splendor.
It's about the interconnectedness of it all.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder what happens when we lose sight of that, when we focus solely on individual achievement without considering the ethical framework, the well-being of those around us.
Yeah, because our actions have ripple effects, right?
Yeah.
What we do impacts the whole.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to those motivational forces, Targhib and Tarhib. It's not enough to just feel them, to yearn for that connection or feel awe at the vastness of it all. We're called to actually embody those principles, to let them guide our choices.
To bring that inner transformation into our interactions with the world.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that while our journeys are unique, we're not on them alone. We have this shared responsibility to nurture our own growth and at the same time contribute to a more just and compassionate world.
Such a powerful message, and one that feels incredibly relevant today.
Wow, this whole deep dive into the Islamic concept of personality has been amazing. We've covered so much ground: the heart, the soul, the spirit, this idea of lifelong growth, the importance of community, ethical action. It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. It's amazing how these ancient teachings can still feel so relevant, so insightful, even today.
Totally. So before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. If our actions are a reflection of our inner state, if purifying our own qualb can actually make the world a better place, then where do we even begin? What small acts of kindness, courage, or compassion can we cultivate in our daily lives to nourish not only our own hearts, but the well-being of everyone around us? That's something I'll definitely be reflecting on. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey into the Islamic perspective on personality. Until next time.
It's been a privilege. Until next time.